Sorry about that. So welcome to this data marketing webinar series. Before starting, I would like to introduce you really briefly to what Data Marketing 2014 is. So it's basically a conference and an exhibition that is taking place in Toronto on December the 10th and 11th, and it's about data-driven marketing. We will welcome more than 50 speakers in the field of marketing, analytics, and data management, as well as pretty great keynote speakers such as the CMO of Tangerine and the head of Songza Canada. So if you're interested in knowing more about this event, feel free to visit our website on datamarketing.ca. And so today, basically, I'm pleased to introduce you to Tim Trussell, who is the analytics lead at SAS Canada. So basically, this webinar will be about visual analysis of marketing planning and results, and Tim will conduct a demonstration of expected direct marketing behavior analysis at what he calls the what-if results and the impact on the overall marketing goals. So he will walk you through his demonstration, and you will be able to ask him questions at the end. So feel free to use our platform to ask questions. You can send direct messages to Tim and he will see them, or you can also send them to the whole group, or you can also speak if you have a microphone and ask your questions directly. So Tim, can you hear me well?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Perfect. Yeah, so the floor is yours, and we'll have Q&As at the end, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the introduction.
Thank you.
And I'm going to share with you PDF that we're going to walk through this. We have a very brief time, but hopefully a very impactful time in which I can share some insights on terms of how SAS views the world of marketing changing through bringing more advanced analytics to the masses through data visualization. I hope to address most of the topics that that we addressed in the introduction, and my goal will be to, through the demonstration, show some stuff, and then afterwards, if there's any questions, we can address them in the Q&A, and I can go into more detail. So, as I said, my objectives today is to introduce you to how SAS sees a new approach for business intelligence and advanced analytics, and hopefully show you some things that you've never been able to do before, whether you're looking at designing a campaign or looking at the results of a campaign in terms of the performance, and being able to understand it from an analytics perspective without having to know a lot of detailed statistical coding or formulas. And I do also want to highlight at the end of my presentation a link where if you're interested, you can find out more information. Keep it track. Quick check that you're able to still hear me and see the slides. I got a yes, perfect. And so what I want to introduce in terms of visualization is the concept of why it matters. And what I invite you to do is try an experiment with me right now. I just put up a table where I've got some information about some performance of my domestic and international, and I'm going to give you another 20 seconds to look at that table and try to gain as much insight as you can from a business perspective. Go. Well, if you're really sharp and very quick, there are actually 5 pieces of meaningful business insight that can be gained from that information. But sometimes they're difficult to spot. Versus if we look at that same data presented in a visual format where we're looking at trends over time, it becomes a little bit more apparent what some of those insights are. As an example, there are, as I said, 5 bits of insight. The first is that domestic seems to be trending about 4 times higher than international. It looks like international is fairly flat, except for an exception that happened in August. We can also notice that the domestic rate has a seasonality pattern where it seems to go up and down, and overall, we can understand that the comparisons very quickly and summarize them out to an individual. So some very meaningful bits of business insight, but they get buried often when we see the numbers and just in a tabular format. And I think too often organizations are relying on traditional spreadsheets in terms of consuming information. And my example today only showcased 2 rows of data. Imagine if we start looking at the results from campaigns that are running online, or we're actually bringing information in terms of where people are clicking in a clickstream information, and we've got millions or even billions of rows of data that we have to try and summarize or understand. And that's really why visualization, I think, matters in terms of getting to the essence of what's important. And so what I want to do is I want to switch over to a bit of a demonstration of how we can visualize some campaign information. So I've got some past campaigns, and I'm going to leverage that also to do a design of a new campaign. And I'm going to show you the demonstration utilizing SAS's visual analytics and visual statistics tools. So give me a second while I set up the screen sharing. And so what you're seeing now is SAS's visual analytics environment. And it's designed as an interactive discovery tool where users can gain insight about, as I said, past campaigns, or they can look at leveraging this in an exploratory way to design new campaigns. Once they've found information out, they can go and share that to the organization in a reporting point of view to try and demonstrate where their campaigns were effective or ineffective. My focus today is going to be on that exploration and analytics, trying to bring it to the masses. If you're interested in finding out more about how we can summarize information into a report and distribute it out into things like an iPad or a web portal, I'd ask you to reach out to me afterwards, and I can set up some more information. But what I've got in front of you is that exploratory environment where I've got a kind of a canvas for me to try and guide my inquiry or my insight. And so here I've got some information about a campaign initiative that was designed to drive donations to a charitable organization. The donation amount and information about the individual we have captured. We've also got historical information about if they've given in the past, how often they've given, and we've got some information about the individual from a socioeconomic status. We've grouped their incomes into different groups, and we're going to explore through this information interactively now. So one of the first things that I might be interested in if I'm looking at my past campaigns is who has donated and how much they've donated. So by dragging and dropping something like the past donation amount onto my canvas, it quickly gives me a distribution where I can see some people donated very little, up to around 12, and then I've got some extreme people who are quite happy to donate over $100 to this particular campaign. For me as an analyst, I'm quite used to seeing people present information in bar charts like this or histograms. But for me as an analyst, if I'm trying to understand future campaigns or campaign performance, I'm trying to understand where it was effective and where it may not have been as effective. And so to do that, I can leverage some statistical summarization tools, going back to that idea of better visualizations. I might select something called a box plot. And a box plot presents that same distribution, but it presents it in terms of where most of the data is in this blue boxed area. It shows me where the average is in terms of that black line, but it also shows me now people who are determined to be outliers, and those are the people that appear in this what we call the whisker in the box plot. And I can hover over it, and I can get some more statistics. So if I'm interested in trying to find out what a quartile range would be, you can see that displayed as a standard deviation for those of you who are like me, mathematically inclined. But from a marketing point of view, trying to bring this type of analytical insight into to use cases, again, my goal would be to try and understand if I'm seeing similar performance across different areas. So I might want to interactively work with this data and understand, for example, do I see the same thing across different genders? So by dragging and dropping gender over, I can see the distribution or where my big spenders are versus my big donators versus my low donators across different things like gender. And I can take a look here at the gender, and I think I may have lost the sharing. Somebody's coming in. hopefully you're able to see again. I lost my red box, which tells me I've seen what I've seen. Hopefully with the description you followed along. If not, I will replay what I quickly did. So I took my donation amount, which is what I was interested in understanding, and I asked to see it by my outliers through this box plot, and then I asked to compare that across my different genders. And from a usability point of view, it's a lot of drag and drop, because the tool tries to help me summarize the information, but from an insight point of view, I can understand, that it looks like my average is different between females, that black line, but in terms of who my biggest donators are, there doesn't seem to be a big difference between whether they're male or female. But I might want to try and interact deeper and actually drill through. So I can, on the fly, go set up something like a new hierarchy that says I might be interested in looking within a gender at perhaps maybe their income group. And based on that income group, maybe some more details about the socioeconomic status cluster. And when I click OK now, I've just created this new hierarchy, and I can look across for outliers or drill through my analysis to say, well, if I'm focusing on the males, who by the black bar seem to have a higher average than females, how does that perform across some of the differences? And what you'll notice is when I drill into just my males, I see that my average for this income group 1 is lower in terms of that black bar, but it has somebody who is a very high outlier, because I have up here a maximum up close to 200, and I can drill one level down, and I can look at this again from a socioeconomic cluster, and I can find again that outlier seems to be in number 3. So I can start to build some plans or some analogies saying, okay, if I'm really trying to drive not necessarily the highest average donation amount, but I want to drive my extreme donators and find out what categories in, or how do I target them, this is one way of approaching that problem. From an analysis point of view, it's fun to do this type of investigation, but oftentimes I need to summarize information out to people. And one way of doing that is something called a tree map. And this is, again, presenting multiple different dimensions, but in a way that something can be portrayed out into a dashboard or a portal. And what I'm showing here is I'm showing my different clusters, that same socioeconomic cluster that I just displayed, and they're representing each a unique box. But that box is being sized and colored by 2 different metrics. The first metric is their lifetime gift amount. So the more the lifetime gift amount for that cluster, the bigger the box is represented. But then I'm also looking at something like the recency, so how long it takes them to donate. And I can see I've colored it by recency, where the people who are more recent are in blue, but the people who are less recent are in red. And so I can look at a very similar analysis as that tree without looking at the outliers, looking at the averages, but give somebody that interactivity, where if they focus on one of the socioeconomic clusters, in this case I picked number 1, they can drill and they can actually look at the next level down, which is in terms of their urbanicity. So I can compare the cities versus the rurals versus the suburbs. And I can look for, again, for that pattern that seems to be giving me that highest lifetime gift or a better recency. So this is an ability for somebody who's a marketing analyst to take that information that they discovered and actually display it out to somebody that summarizes a lot of information without having to go through hundreds and hundreds of rows and columns or spreadsheets. SAS, though, is a statistical company, and we want to give people the ability to take it one step further. And I'll go back to my box plot analysis, where this time I may be interested in just understanding a model that predicts people who donate versus they didn't donate. And so I can look at my distribution in my data. I have some people who donated and some people who did not. And I can use that box plot analysis again to see if there's any differences between, say, for example, their age, maybe their home value, or their income. And if I put those metrics onto my plot, I can do that eyeball analysis like I talked about before. I can look at whether somebody donated or not, what's the difference in terms of their boxes. But SAS has the ability to take it and actually build a model from this. And we're going to leverage statistical powers. If I was to click on this, I would open up my my statistical analysis, which would give me a logistic regression. Now, this can become very statistical, and I want to keep things at a kind of high level for the audience, but it's a continuation of that visualization environment for now somebody who's perhaps more of an analytical modeler. They can do things like look at how each of the different variables are important in the statistical. And they can also get assessments in terms of how well the model is performing using statistics like an R-square. And in this case, my model is not very good. It still needs some work. Or I can look at things in terms of a lift of a performance. But that dynamism that I demonstrated with my visualizations can be extended in terms of improving this model as well. I can leverage a dynamic clustering analysis where I can look at their lifetime gift amounts, how many times they've given, what's the time since they've given, and I can put together a cluster ID which represents some people who maybe they've given highly in a lifetime, but they actually, when they do that, they don't give very often, versus the people who are in this yellow cluster who don't give them very much money, but when they do give, they actually give frequently. And so I can derive these new clusters of people mathematically, and I can right-click and say include this new cluster definition that I just created as an attribute for me to use in my analysis. And so I can derive that cluster variable. Once again, interacting with all of my data so that I'm able to get the insights not just on a sample, but on my full population. And I can go back to that logistic model. And it's going to be it's building the model behind the scenes each time I make a change. And now if I come over and I take that new ID that I just created, that cluster ID, I can either include that in the model to see if it improves my model, or I can even, if I wanted to, create a new model for each of my newly created clusters. And I apologize for the technical math behind what I'm doing, but what it allows me to do is very rapidly build a model that helps me understand for some of my clusters, age is going to be very important versus other clusters where age may be very unimportant. Or I can compare the model's effectiveness at the different cluster level to see, well, I actually can look at my model performance in cluster 1 and 2, and when I look at the lift plot, it looks actually like the model is doing well. But if I compare that to my cluster ID 4, this is actually a group that my model is underperforming in, and I might want to ignore these groups and not try to build a model for them. And so what it allows me as an analyst is a very visual environment to try and test some of my hypotheses or test some of the learnings I can derive. But once again, I'm not reliant on any type of programming language to do that. So I'm going to go back and go back to that PowerPoint that we were showing. And I just want to wrap it up with a couple of thoughts for everyone. So one of the, what I just demonstrated is our ability to develop visualization. But one of the things that I need to make sure I highlight is that SAS is doing this leveraging one of our new advances called our in-memory architecture for our visual analytics and visual statistics. And in doing that, what we've done is we've loaded the data set that I was playing with into memory, which allows for, even on very large data sets, in my case, I've been able to analyze things in the millions or billions of rows, but doing so in a way that still gets that responsiveness in that visual environment by taking advantage of multiple processors if you have a large environment, or if I wanted to, a very small environment for a smaller data set. So it can scale and be as big or as small as it's needed to support that rapid type of visualization. And lastly, I promised, even though we had a short time, that I'd I've given you a link to where you can try this out for yourself. So if you go to the SAS website, and if you click on our Try Before You Buy link, we've put up into that environment a SAS Visual Analytics server that you can register by creating a profile, and then you can click on an orange button that says Launch SAS Visual Analytics, and you'll be put into a portal very similar to the one I showed that has some simple toy company where they've got different products and different sales performance and marketing performance, and you can go and interact and do some of those box plots or the analysis that I performed in terms of that tree map, and get a feel for how the tool would work. And if you're also interested, I'd welcome you to reach out to myself or anybody at SAS, and we'd be happy to do a custom discussion with your data and how it might develop. With that, I kept my presentation intentionally brief so that I could open it up to questions. If you had any questions, you can feel free to ping me, or you can ping the group, and I'll try to address your questions now.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. You can turn on your microphone or send a message directly to the group. Any questions? I have one question on my end. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering, so for this tool, how do you implement SAS Analytics? How does it, like, let's say, as a marketer, what would be the first steps in a way to implement this solution? Is it like complicated? Do you need to include IT in the implementation process, or because like the importance of the Data Marketing 2014 event is about how marketers can implement some solutions that sometimes are very technical, for example. So what would you say about that? Is it easy? Do marketers, like, should they be afraid to implement that, or not at all? How do you implement that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. In my experience, it depends on the relationship that the marketing group has within the organization. So I'm working with some marketing groups where they're reluctant to, because of the time, they want to get quick insights. So one of the options that SAS has is we can host a solution for companies where we play the role of IT, and we manage the security and the access so that marketers can get their data up and start gaining insights very quickly. Other organizations, they prefer to work with their IT, and the solution itself is actually fairly quick for an IT department to implement and get up and running to support the marketing. So whether it be a desire to have SAS play the role of IT and host the solution in a web-based environment, that's possible. The others would be, we would work with the IT to enable the data and the environment to be set up as quickly as possible. I did get another question with respect to what are the main questions that marketers should answer when they do data visualization. And I think it's an excellent broad topic. I think the biggest area where visualization I've seen making a difference is in helping to let data back up assumptions that may be present within the marketing group or within the business that may not be founded historically on fact. So if there's somebody who wants to I worked with one group who were doing campaign design, and essentially they were looking for something that could rapidly filter. So they wanted to say, I think we should be targeting people who are above a certain age, who are in this region and have done this type of transaction. And what the tool allowed them to do is to put those filters in and visualize it, but then do a comparison. So I showed a box plot. That's one example, but you can use other types of visualizations to showcase whether or not, when you get to that level of assumption, whether or not statistically it holds true, as a meaningful filter or a subset to target. It can also be used to visualize assumptions associated with performance. So if people say this campaign was designed to drive high value, you can quickly demonstrate not just the response of the campaign in terms of click-throughs, but also within that subset of people who click through, what was the next action or the value of that group by introducing other variables, other attributes. So, Dina, I hope I answered your question. I got one more question online from Michael. In implementing these types of solutions, where's the most effort required? I think it's equally balanced between getting the data to throw into a tool to visualize it. So actually setting up the tool itself doesn't take much time. Thinking about the data that's required to test those assumptions or test those hypotheses or visualize those results is often can often be very straightforward if you've got a methodology in place to pull that into an Excel or some sort of file format. But if you don't, then usually the effort is in thinking about the problem and capturing the data that you want to visualize. Is where a lot of the effort is designed. Couple minutes.
Questions? Have you received any other messages, or are you okay for now?
Those are all the questions I've received by message right now.
Can you see them on your on the platform, or?
Yeah, I saw the one from Michael and Dina. I don't see any others that have come through to the group or to me directly.
Okay, so then I think you would have seen them if you had other questions. So I think unless you have anything else to add today, I think maybe we could wrap up. Anything else that you would like to add?
No, just a thank you to everybody who attended for their time. If you are interested in finding out more, I do invite you to go to the SAS.com site, where I said you can try it yourself, or reach out to a SAS contact, and we will be very happy to to carry out a conversation specifically about your marketing group or your organization.
Great, thank you, Tim. And so we will see you at the data marketing event in December. Thank you very much for this demonstration. And feel free to reach our team at datamarketing.ca if you need us to put you in touch with Tim or the SAS team. And next month we will conduct two other webinars, and we will send you all the information on the demonstrations going on. So keep in touch. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.